Yeah, so a little bit of background on this project. So this idea came to me and us during my undergraduate degree. And my background is my undergrad is in agricultural communications. So I'm very interested in communications and why people do the things that they do. And so I love the beef industry. It's,
Hmm.
what I know, but I was in college and moving from a really small town to a it's sad that we say Moscow,
Yeah.
Idaho is like a bigger town, but it is. And there kind of just seemed to be an explosion of people really choosing to consume grass-fed beef. In my opinion, that's not good nor bad. It's just what it is, right?
Sure.
And
Yep.
I was having conversations with people about why they were choosing to consume grass-fed beef. And I just found it so interesting.
Welcome to MeatsPad. In collaboration with the American Meat Science Association, it's a platform dedicated to share breakthrough knowledge that is accessible to the global meat industry. On each episode, you'll have the opportunity to listen and learn from meat specialists and professionals about the whole meat industry. This podcast is brought to you by the U.S. Meat Export Federation, Ultrasource, equipment and supplies for the meat and food industry.
Hello, meat folks. Welcome back to the MeatsPad podcast. It's your happy, hungry host, Phil Bass. And this week, we have a guest with us who our founder of MeatsPad and my good friend Dr. Francisco Nahar, reached out to me a little while back and said had a paper and said, "Do you know this person?" And the person was Dr. Catlin Wolf. And Dr. Wolf, yes, I absolutely know them very well, know the family. And so I went over just down the street from where I work, because she also works at the University of Idaho, and asked her, "Would you be willing to be on the podcast?" And she said, "Always willing to help, but you need to talk to the person who actually did the project." And so with us today is Klae O'Brien. Klae, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
And so Klae, you're the lead author on this paper, and I'm going to read the title for everyone. So if you want to go out and check it out, it's published in the Journal of Applied Communications, and that's kind of weird to have on a meats podcast, meat science podcast. But Klae did some really cool meat science type research, and the title is "The Meat of the Matter: The Effect of Science-Based Information on Consumer Perception of Grass-Fed Beef." And that got Dr. Nahar's attention, obviously, and which has gotten my attention. I read the paper. I couldn't tell you every detail about it, but I'm excited for Klae to share with the listening audience a little bit about it. And so again, Klae, thanks for joining us. And I promise the questions won't be too hard. All right.
Yeah, I'm
So
excited.
very good, very good. All right. So first off, the title is it really explains a lot of what the project was. But let's go ahead and have you describe the project a little bit and why you chose to investigate consumer perceptions of grass-fed beef.
Yeah, so a little bit of background on this project. So this idea came to me and us during my undergraduate degree um, at the University of Idaho. So it was funded by undergraduate research at University of Idaho
Cool.
initially. That's where we received the initial funding for this. Um, and my background is my undergrad is in agricultural communications. So I'm very interested in communications and why people do the things that they do. And I grew up on a small cattle operation in Southeast Idaho. And so I love the beef industry. It's,
Hmm.
what I know, but I was in college and moving from a really small town to a it's sad that we say Moscow,
Yeah.
Idaho is like a bigger town, but it is. And there kind of just seemed to be an explosion of people really choosing to consume grass-fed beef.
Hmm.
In my opinion, that's not good nor bad. It's just what it is, right?
Sure.
And I
Yep.
was having conversations with people about why they were choosing to consume grass-fed beef. And I just found it so interesting because, as we know, our consumers are no longer connected. Most of our consumers are no longer connected to the production of our food.
Yeah.
And so the information it seemed that they were getting wasn't always what I understood to be necessarily the truth. It was the
Mm.
most easily accessible information, was kind of my outsider's perception of it. And so I was like, I wonder if people, are making claims that, grass-fed beef doesn't have artificial hormones.
Hmm.
If they learned that there is no regulations on that, would that
Hmm.
change their opinions, right? What can we do to not only understand why consumers believe the things that they do, but also if we present them with factual information, are they even receptive of it?
Right.
That was kind of the, broad ideas. And it was because, I come from a really small town cattle operation, and then I'm in an environment with a lot of people that just have different perspectives than I do. And so, yeah. And so then I got involved with undergraduate research, and we kind of brought a couple people on board that were so much smarter than me. And so, yeah, this was kind of my little project in my undergrad degree, backed, like you said, in social science, but looking
Yeah.
at the broader scheme of beef consumption.
Well, that's so cool. So, okay, so that lays the background of why you chose to do the project, and a little bit of how you went about it. But tell us what your findings were. What were some of the take home messages?
Yeah, so to explain that, I'm gonna go a little bit deeper into how we did it. So the
Hmm.
idea was also, are people accepting of factual information, and does how we present that information, does that make a difference? So
Hmm.
we did a pre-test, treatment, post-test is the way that this study happened. And so the pre-test was just asking questions about like nutrition, environmental impact, even the current costs at the time at the local Walmart, and
Hmm.
then animal welfare, antibiotic and like growth hormone information, um, just their perceptions of those. And it was a 1 to 5 Likert scale of whatever. And then we randomly they got randomly assigned to a treatment. There was 4 treatments. There was an infographic with citations. There was an infographic without citations, just a plain text paper with citations, and a plain text paper without citations.
Hmm.
And so we are like, does the presentation of the information make a difference? And then in general, does that information make a difference? So
Hmm.
that's kind of how the study happened. And we found that at the end of the day, the overall instrument did change perceptions of grass-fed beef.
Oh, wow.
When presented with, at the time, the factual information, um, people were like, oh, we didn't know that, this is me summarizing, but we didn't know that there literally are no regulations on slapping a grass-fed label on a package of beef, right?
That's
So you're
true. Yeah.
saying that it doesn't have to be hormone-free. You're just saying that they can be given grain, but it needs to also be grass-fed.
Yeah.
People didn't realize that. So when we presented that information, when we presented the nutritional differences or whatever, people seem to have changed their opinion slightly. So the overall findings was that, yeah, people do change their perceptions when given factual information.
Sure.
But we didn't find a difference between the presentation of the information. So those 4 different treatments, they didn't show a significant difference, but
Hmm.
which is kind of interesting to me. But yeah, and then I think one of the other big takeaways when I was looking back at this data and research was the fact that 56% of the people, the respondents, noted that they got their information about the food they eat from the internet,
Hmm.
and only 8.3% said they got it from academic workers, and only 6% said they got it from farmers or producers.
Yeah.
Since 1883, Ultrasource has been a trusted supplier to the food industry. Ultrasource provides superior kill floor, processing, packaging, and labeling equipment and operational supplies.
Well, and that's not surprising at all. I mean, that's where so many folks immediately go is the quick, easy answer, of course, with going to the internet. Most, as you've already mentioned, most folks are so disconnected from their food. How can they talk to a farmer if they would like? And then, that's very telling, and something for our academic listeners out there. I've said this before. Many people don't know we exist. And so we can't be a resource if indeed we're not out there sharing this information. And MeatsPad is a great platform for that, but there's also other means of going about that. And so that's very telling.
Yeah.
I think it's good information. What additional thoughts maybe came about from your findings? Like, is there something that our producers and processors can use this information for to better connect with consumers? And that could be selling more grass finished beef, or it could be more just traditional beef.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just chatting with Dr. Sarah Bush, who was
Hmm.
one of the people also on the paper with me, but about this study. And I was like, you know what? I wonder if it would be interesting to replicate it already. It's kind of soon, but
Uh-huh.
I was talking to her about it because people utilize social media so much. And I think that producers have started, at least that's my my perception of
Yeah.
what's happening, but they've really started to utilize social media more because we know, like, these numbers don't lie. And I think that without these numbers, we would assume that that's where people go to get the information on their food. And I
Mm,
think that a lot of producers and even some scientists have, like you guys having this podcast, have seen that avenue and have started hitting that. Because
mm,
why would you could get on Google and you could search, the benefits, but that information is so hard to consume that I
mm.
actually think the industry is starting to do a really good job seeing this is where the gap is, right?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it's not fixed, it's not perfect, but that's, I think, what the big takeaway was is, people want to know where their food comes from.
Mm,
That's very obvious. And they're going out and they're doing the research. But if we're not present, if the scientists, if the university, if the producers are not present where people are looking for the information, they're going to get information from other people, from other places,
that's right.
And
Yeah.
so I think that just having a increasingly palatable and interesting presence on social media or those other platforms, I think that that's really the big takeaway for me is people are looking for the information. So to be the first ones there to give them the correct factual information.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're hitting all the right marks right there for sure. I want to share a little bit about your background, and you can correct me, but you said you're undergraduate in agricultural communications, and then you did a master's degree on that as well. Is that correct?
Yep, so my master's degree is technically in agricultural education, but it
Okay.
was just the social science ag degree, really,
Hmm.
to get my master's degree. My master's thesis also had to do with communications, and
Sure.
so that's just kind of what I'm very interested in. Yep.
Well, and I want to share with the folks that are listening out there, especially if you're more in the commercial world, not just the academic side, but the commercial world, and take what Klae is saying to heart. Um, Especially if maybe you're more of the I want to say long in the tooth, but we'll just say the wiser crowd that's out there.
Yeah.
That's been around for a while and know the business real well. Don't forget to embrace the younger crowd who do understand social media, and especially reach out to your local universities for the ag communications department. These are people trained to tell your story. Hire them, bring them on. Get them excited about your business. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that when I was in my undergrad degree at University of Idaho, we got to work on some little like projects with other businesses and stuff, and it was so fun. And I think that we kind of brought a fresh, perspective to some things that maybe would be needed. But yeah, I think it's such an avenue that people are already there, and so it's showing up authentically to grab that attention.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, and so I think so. We've covered the project. I think if you want more information, definitely go look the project up. And I'm sure you can write to us at info@meatspad.com. We can connect you with Klae. But Klae, I want to know just a little bit more about. You come from a cattle background. You said down in southern Idaho, but you're currently our extension educator in Lewis County. So that's more of the north central Idaho area, not far from where the University of Idaho is right now. Not so when you say a small town, the town that you're in right now is extremely small, I would say, especially compared to Moscow. And most people, just in case you need to know how big is the town of Moscow, Idaho, where the University of Idaho is, it's only 25,000 people, and that's on a really good day, I would say. Middle of classes and everything kind of thing. So Idaho's definitely a rural area. Sounds like you came from a rural area. But how did you get into the agricultural communications realm? It's not you come from a cattle background. Why aren't you cowboying out there right now?
Yeah, so I grew up in, I guess I can't really call it a small town anymore, but Aberdeen, Idaho,
Okay,
down in southeast Idaho. Think of Idaho and potatoes, that's my hometown.
that's
But
it.
we
Yep.
we had cows growing up, and I found it really interesting. I was born and raised to be a Vandal, so there's no question about going to the U of I. And I was just really interested in the communication side of things. I like people, I like dealing with people, and so that was always my goal to either go into strategic communications or I grew up in the 4-H program, so
Hmm.
extension was always in the back of my mind. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, I like connecting people with the information. And I think that my current job in being the extension educator is perfect for that. But my family still has cows. I still get to be part of that, but I get
Good.
to do the more people forward and big consumer of beef. So
Yeah.
I love it. But yeah, I love being on the social science side of things, to be completely honest. It's really interesting with me.
Well, we appreciate that. We need a lot of people out there and telling the story. And this is a great avenue, especially for those who maybe out there have children at home that are getting close to going to college. Not sure what you want to do, but have people skills. We need people who have people skills, who can tell the story and also have a little background in agriculture or meat processing. And so that's what Klae brings to the table. And sounds like you benefited from the 4-H programs, and now you're giving back, which is so cool. And I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been, I really wanted to do extension for many, many years, and I've been
Mhm.
in this job for about 8 months now, and it's been great. So I love working for my alma mater now and being in the rural communities, but also kind of still being able to touch lives of, maybe the more urbanized folk too. So that's
Sure.
been a great middle ground. So
Yeah, yeah, and especially, in a state like Idaho, and many of the listeners out there, I'm sure, have these experiences as well. We may live in agriculturally based rural communities, but there's still a lot of folks out there that's in those communities that still don't know what we do. And so don't be afraid to share the story. We have to do this. So,
absolutely. Yeah,
yeah.
storytelling is key. And yeah,
Excellent. Well, Klae, thank you so much for joining us. As your career progresses, I'm sure we'll be back in touch.
yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
Great.